Hey guys, and my Gavanin. Why did I just say some random gibberish? Well, because on this week's episode of the Council of Elrond, a Lord of the Rings podcast, we are going to be talking about all of the languages in Tolkien's Middle-earth. I'm Dave, and with me is the Frodo to my Sam, Johnny. So get comfy, or continue cleaning the house, or whatever multitasking job you're already doing, and enjoy. If you'd like to know how to insult someone in Elvish, stick around to the end of the podcast. Right, so of course Tolkien was a linguistic badass for his time, and anybody's time actually, really, of all time. Tolkien created languages as a form of art and pleasure. This was like his version of doodling, so whenever he had a bit of free time, he'd be just sitting there under a tree doodling away and creating languages. And the languages actually came first. The interesting thing about Lord of the Rings, or about J.R.R. Tolkien, is that he created the languages and then decided to write the Lord of the Rings to have a place where his languages could grow and feel alive. And that
what a crazy hobby.
I know, yeah. Like, that's the difference between him and George or Martin, for example. Like, I feel like every modern writer would come up with the story first, of course, right?
Yeah, that probably would be like the more logical way, or the more natural.
And probably wouldn't create a language at all.
Exactly, and most people struggle to learn a second language, and it's like, if you have to learn a second language in school, it's usually like a massive struggle, but and a massive pain in the arse. But if he's just there, like, what'll I do today in my downtime? I'll just make a little language.
I think he told his son Christopher in a letter that was the reason he wrote Lord of the Rings, was for him, so that his languages could feel real and breathe. The most used language in his universe, in his in-universe, is Westron, which is similar to, you know, in Game of Thrones, they have the common tongue, I suppose. Basically English, like modern English. So Westron would have been his... Anytime anyone's speaking English in the books, I suppose, they're technically speaking Westron.
Right. Is it like Westernese or something in Game of Thrones?
It could be.
Did I just make that up?
I don't know. You could have made that up, but I just know I'm pretty sure in the show they say, "Do you speak the common tongue?" sometimes, and I just thought, "Oh,
no, yeah,
cool."
yeah."
Because they can't
definitely,
say, "Do you speak English?" and they'd be like, "What the hell is English?" Of course, the other characters that speak English in the films, like the Rohirrim, have their own language, which is Rohirric, which is similar to Old English, and that was the kind of the style that Tolkien was using there.
Did you ever notice that, like, Rohirric is basically like heroic in a different like a combination of letters?
Yeah.
Their language is heroic. I mean, Rohirric.
And Westron is like Age of Ultron backwards.
Ron Twist.
Ron Twestron. Do you know any of the Elvish languages?
The individual languages?
Well, like, do you know any of the names of them?
Or do I know how to speak any Elvish?
Are you fluent in Elvish, Johnny?
No, but I could, like, pretend to be. If you want, I could be like, "It's a what?"
It's a what? Just whispering. Like, that's Elvish.
Exactly. You just got exactly. That's how Kate Blanchett talks at the beginning of the first movie. The individual Elvish languages. I don't know.
I think there's loads, but the main one that you would hear in the books, or sorry, you wouldn't hear it in the books, that you read is Sindarin.
Oh, sorry, yeah, of course, Sindarin. But they also speak Sindarin in Gondor. A lot of people speak Sindarin in Gondor, and so for example, Gandalf is his name is Gandalf, obviously, but that's the name that we all hear. But that's his name that's his, as you say, like the common tongue kind of name from. That's his name. That's his
Westron name.
That's his Westron name, exactly.
Oh,
but
cool.
His Sindarin name is Mithrandir. And so that's why the elves call him Mithrandir. Like, you'll often hear Galadriel call him Mithrandir. But then also you'll hear Denethor call him Mithrandir because they speak Sindarin in Gondor.
So Sindarin is actually derived from Kenya, or Quenya. I think it's Quenya. It's got a U in there. But Quenya would be the High Elven language spoken by the likes of Galadriel and Celeborn. Of course, they do speak Sindarin as well, because Sindarin being derived from Quenya would be the kind of the common tongue of the elves. So there's the Grey Elves, which speak Sindarin, but the common tongue for everyone of elven nature would be Sindarin. And Aragorn is an example of someone that actually speaks Quenya, so he's kind of like a formal or higher up version. Obviously, Aragorn is a badass and he's cool and he gets to speak the formal language. And I thought you would.
So like which is the language that like the animals, like the horses, like when he speaks to his horse Brago, is Brago like, oh, he's speaking like
well,
Quenya,
Brago is fluent in many languages. He's also fluent in black speech as well. I was thinking you'd know about that whole formal speaking because in Spanish, which you speak Spanish, right?
I do, yeah.
Yeah, they have that whole like formal thing, and I was thinking it was similar.
Right,
to
they're
Quenya.
like they're speaking like with usted, and the other people are speaking with like
Ustedes.
tú. Exactly, yeah, very good.
So Quenya is basically just adding sir to the end of everything, or madam.
It's a pain in the arse, that formal way of speaking. It's just completely unnecessary in my opinion. It's just it makes things way too confusing. When people are like, how are you? And they're like, how is he? And you're like, wait, who? Me or him? Or what's going on? Yeah. So
just think how Brago feels. He used to put up with that. Aragorn speaking Quenya, and then I don't know, Bilbo coming up to him and speaking some other language. Exactly, poor Brago.
Yeah. Totally confusing.
So Quenya would have, when Tolkien was writing that, he would have based it off Finnish languages, and Sindarin would have been based, or not languages, there's probably only one Finnish language. Sindarin would have been similar to Welsh and Irish, which is ourselves, which makes Sindarin pretty cool, yeah. So I suppose Welsh, Irish would be kind of Gaelic-y. And then we have Old Entish, which of course is spoken by wolves. Spoken by the Ents. And the Ents, I know in the movies, Legolas walks around and he says, oh, we started waking them up back in the olden days and whatnot.
Teaching them how to speak.
Exactly, teaching them how to speak. But the elves taught the Ents many things, including Sindarin, but were unable themselves to learn Old Entish. It's apparently a very, very complicated and very, very slow language. So
yeah, you cannot be hasty. If
you cannot be hasty.
Entish. Exactly.
And the elves are known to be master linguists, and it's quite shocking that they can't pick up a tree's language, if you ask me.
Yeah, that's interesting. I hadn't even really thought about that, but like, I mean, I think it's obviously not a very efficient language if it takes all day for you to actually say something like good morning, which they say in the Two Towers. So yeah.
Yeah, they obviously don't do an awful lot if it just takes them all day to say one thing like that. And it's obviously not worth saying if it takes a very long time to say.
Now don't be hasty, Master Meriadoc.
So another language that Tolkien had created was the Black Speech, and that was supposed to be a very kind of ugly sounding language. It was created...
What did he base that off?
What did he base it off?
Yeah, what was his like in his head when he was trying to come up with that language? What was he like? You know what's the most disgusting language I know in the world? I'm just interested to hear what it is.
Definitely Geordie. No, I can't say that. I don't know, but Black Speech was created by Sauron for mostly his higher status commanders such as Nazgul. So you would hear the Nazgul kind of whispering a bit of Black Speech, and anytime the ring is on screen, you'd hear, you know, Sauron, he might be saying something kind of cool, quah, 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 quah. Something weird like that. But the most known usage of Black Speech is on the One Ring, which is written in Tengwar, which is a Elvish script, but that's a whole other thing. I think some of the languages, they have their own version of a language when it's been written, and it can't really be spoken. Okay. So, you know, if it's spoken in Black Speech, which is why...
So wait, then like you're saying the Nazgul, are they speaking Black Speech all the time when they're like shrieking? What's that about?
I think that's just Fran Walsh screaming into the microphone.
Fran Walsh mixed with a dying horse or something.
Yeah, so if anyone doesn't know Fran Walsh, that's one of the producers on Lord of the Rings, and I think she helped create the Nazgul scream.
Yeah, that's one of the feathers in her cap.
Peter Jackson just poked her in the bum every time she was walking past and held a microphone to her face. So yeah, that's a little bit confusing, the whole ring being written in Tengwar, but it's black speech. But yeah, one ring to rule them all is technically black speech, and I think some of the orcs use it in The Hobbit, but most of the time orcs speak some variant of Westron or English or Cockney.
I thought there was actually a language called Orcish.
There, in my research, I didn't see that. There was many things that said variants of orc languages and Westron, like mixed with black speech. I know that there is languages called language of the trolls and language of the wargs, but yeah. I'm sure. Oh, they have their own little dialects, and they probably have a little bit of black speech in there, a little bit of Cockney English, a little bit of Westron. And
Oi! I'll have your guts if you don't shut this rabble down. Move along, scum!
so that leaves the dwarves, and the dwarves use a language called Khuzdul, which is do you remember when that's spoken in the movies? Any Khuzdul in there?
When they speak Dwarvish in the movies. I don't know. Because I know that maybe when Gimli insults the Elfies, says like Ishkakui or whatever it is.
Exactly.
That's Elvish, isn't it? That's not Dwarvish.
No, that's Dwarvish.
Is that Dwarvish? Okay.
That's Khuzdul. He says Ishkakui I durugnul.
Ishkakui, I gorugnul.
Exactly, and that translates to basically I spit on your grave, isn't it?
Yeah, well done. Yeah, you know your Khuzdul. That's based off an Arabic or kind of Hebrew language. That's what Tolkien was aiming for when he was going for Khuzdul. And the writing script, just like Elvish, they have Tenguin. Well, the dwarves have, the script is called Kurth, and that's based on Nordic runes. So when they're in the Mines of Moria and you see all these, they're almost like runes. You know, you see them all around the place. They're on their shields and they're on the pillars and everything. Their whole architecture is actually kind of based on, you know, squares and pillars and Nordic runes and things like that. But in the universe, not much of the dwarven language is known, as of course they keep it secret, unlike the elves, who are just flaunting their Elvish all around the place. But yeah, it's supposed to be secret, so that was probably Tolkien's lazy way of saying, I don't want to write any more of this boring language. But yeah, there are endless languages mentioned throughout Tolkien's books, including Hobbitish, New Entish, Manish, Nandoran, Valoran, and much, much more. There's seriously endless languages, I'd say.
Nandoran's what you speak when you go to Nando's, is it? You're trying to order some piri piri chicken.
Yeah, can I get some piri piri chicken, please? Yeah, of course. There's so many. I don't know how much time and effort he put into others, because you can practically speak Sindarin and Quenya, and yeah, I think those two are
they're like fully
popular.
they're fully developed languages, basically, aren't they?
Almost fully developed. It's mostly just lots and lots of phrases, and when they were doing the movies, they actually had to have some linguists come in and fill in some gaps. But
do you know about in the making of the movie? Do you know how much of the languages the actors had to learn? Did they have to learn just their own parts, or did any actors take like personal interest and learn more than they needed to, or anything about that?
I know that Viggo Mortensen was a serious nerd, and I actually saw him recently on the OneRing.net. He was on a live stream talking to them.
What a guy!
He's such a legend. He knows everything about the books, and
he slept with his sword as well, didn't he? I'm pretty sure so.
And they've baby swords now. Yeah, I think
little daggers.
Yeah, I think he did sleep with his sword on.
I'm pretty sure that was the thing, that he slept with his sword, like to keep himself in Aragorn mode. And
he adopted Brago as well, I think.
Did he adopt him? Because I know that he became really friendly with him, because that scene in the Two Towers when Brago rescues him after he falls with the battle with the wargs, he falls down, floats away in the river, and then Brago comes and actually crouches down beside him. And I remember that scene, they had to train the horse for like a couple of weeks or something. They had to do that. They had to prepare for that scene for a few weeks, and he did a load of takes of lying down with the horse and have to lie down beside him and get really comfortable with him. So I remember hearing that he just developed this kind of bond with the horse, and so but I didn't know that he'd adopted him.
Yeah, sure, he slept with Brago as well. He had to sleep with the horse and the sword. It was part of his contract. So Tolkien's work played a crucial role in elevating language invention, and more we see made-up languages such as Dothraki in Game of Thrones, Klingon in Star Trek, Na'vi in Avatar, the dragon language in Skyrim. I think those are the kind of the main ones. I think you can go to college and you can like study Dothraki and Klingon and all those kind of nerdy things.
The main ones I was thinking of were them ones as well. Like Klingon. Anyway, I know that's a big one for all the big nerds out there.
So to finish off, I can teach you one or two Elvish phrases that will get you through the day. So, hello is a simple one. It's just just the letter A. Yes, that's like a long hello.
Can you extend it like hello? Just be like So if you're saying hello and you're a bit surprised, you're like hello. You're like
And if you're saying hello and you're in pain, it's like It's like that scene from what is it?
From the Holy Grail.
From the Holy Grail.
He wouldn't have just carved into the rock. He would have said it.
Ooh, no, it's back of the throat. It's more like
Isn't there a St. Ives in Cornwall?
Oh, that's St. Ives.
Oh, yes. St. Ives.
So, also, like what I said at the very start of the podcast, I said, "My Gavanin," which is like, well met, basically. It's kind of nice to meet you or a welcome. My Gavanin. I think that's a really cool one to have. And
that's cool.
A farewell would be Namarie, which is also nice and rolls off the tongue. And finally, if you want to insult one of your friends, you can say Holmelia na ver orco, which means your smell is like that of an orc. Holmelia na ver orco.
During this lockdown, there's been, and working from home, there's quite a few days that go by that I don't shower in a full day, or maybe a day and a half, so I'm sure I could probably...
Holmelia na ver orco.
Exactly, I could probably say that about myself. Maybe my girlfriend gets home and she could say that to me, that I have a bit of an orcish smell off me.
Riddles in the dark.
So this is a new section called Riddles in the Dark. In Riddles in the Dark, I'm going to bring a question to Johnny that he's never heard before, so he's had no time to prepare, and he's going to have to come up with some little answer on the spot. So Johnny, why was the riddle at Durin's door written in Elvish? Oh, I was keeping in theme with the podcast episode.
It's a good question. Because you would have thought it would have been in Dwarvish, of course, because
Khuzdul.
in Khuzdul. Thank you.
You're welcome.
It was written in Elvish. I know this answer.
Of course you do, you big nerd.
Because it was it was the spell was created by an elf. It wasn't created by a dwarf. I can't remember which elf, but I know that
Which elf?
elf witch.
Yeah,
I can't remember. I'm not going to be able to give you a good answer, but I know that it was definitely an elf that created, or an elf that helped the dwarves how to like design these mystic doors and things like that. But I can't remember now.
So, actually, while you were speaking there, I was thinking of an answer that I didn't have written down, but I was thinking, well, maybe elves were the only ones that could reach that tall and write something up there, so they just snuck their own language in. But no, the correct answer was the gate was originally created for the elves living in Moria at the time to pass outside to the elven lands close by. Although the dwarves manufactured the gate, since it was primarily used by the elves, the spell was cast upon it by the elves. Like, I remember when I was watching the movies, I used to always think it was a mistake when Frodo asks for the Elvish word for friend. I always just kind of thought that was because Peter Jackson didn't want to confuse the audience and go, what's the Dwarvish word? And everyone would be like, well, now we have to learn Dwarvish as well. But no, that's actually written in Elvish.
No, that's that's exactly right. I couldn't remember the reason for it, but I remember it. I had the same feeling when I used to watch the movies, that I was definitely confused. I remember seeing, like, why would it be in Elvish if it's like a dwarf home? But I had read that a few years ago, and I couldn't remember. Remember the exact reason for it, but I remember hearing that it had been made by the elves, and then since then I've watched the movies obviously a few times again, and when I see that part, I hadn't remembered the reason for it, but I remember watching that movie now, and I don't have that same feeling of, that's weird. So that's cool.
I think lots of times when I'm watching the movies, there's There's always these little questions such as that where I'm like, oh yeah, why is that in Elvish? And then by the end of the movie, I'm just so amazed at how unreal the movie was for the 100th viewing that I forget all my questions that I had. But yeah. Well guys, that concludes another episode of the Council of Elrond. Thank you all so much for listening. It really means a lot to us. Now go out and insult people in Elvish. But before you do, please leave us a 5-star review, subscribe, tell a friend and share it on social media. You'll be helping us out a lot. Do you know any cool Elvish phrases? Or do you have a tidbit of information about a Tolkien language? Please let us know and drop us a message on our Facebook page, The Mellon Heads, or on Twitter at Mellon_heads. Remember, that's Mellon with 2 L's.
Mellon.
That's all from us, folks. Namarie, and see you next time.